It's true that Berserk is the compelling dark fantasy masterpiece it is because of its layered and complex characters and storytelling, but it wouldn't be half as interesting without its main antagonist group, the Apostles. In our world, the term apostle is associated with the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, or a person who champions a cause until their dying breath. The latter description can be applied to Berserk's apostles, but in our headcanon, they're an amalgamation and reflection of both of those ideas. Apostles in Berserk are god-loving creatures, believe it or not. They are ardent followers of a single idea that is expressed to them through the medium of 5 guardian angels. And while all of this sounds rather biblical, the main difference between those apostles and the ones created by Kentaro Miura is the simple fact that the latter's creations are servants of evil. Apostles in Berserk are the idea of evil personified through the flesh of man, and as such, they represent the worst aspects of all of us. But how are they created, and why? What is their purpose in the story? We'll answer all that and more in this video. This is Apostles and the Inhuman World, Explained. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. They're the lackeys of the true big bads of the show, but calling them lackeys would be a severe understatement. Apostles' Introduction to Berserk. We should have known we were going to be in for one hell of a ride when the opening panels of Berserk showed Guts killing a hideous monster mid-coitus with his arm cannon. The female apostle was a good introduction to just how terrifying these demonic entities can look, but the true explanation of the nature of an apostle came with the Snake Baron and the Slug Count. The Snake Baron showed us the primary reason for an apostle's existence: carnage and carnitas. Only these devils like to replace their swine with human flesh. One of the reasons why apostles were immediately impactful upon being introduced was the fact that they were brought in as cannibals. They enjoyed the taste of man meat, not like that, and they would go to extreme lengths in order to acquire it. The Snake Baron took over Coca Castle and was given a steady supply of food in exchange for the promise of not attacking the city below. The Slug Count used his heretic hunt as an excuse to gather more meat for his personal experimentation chamber, where he did things that left his physician Vargas scarred for life. That's another theme common in apostles: their drive to do the most unspeakable things in the name of fulfilling their desires. The Slug Count was said to not only feast upon his prisoners, but he was also said to have violated them before. And aren't we glad that Miura decided not to show us just what he meant by that? Apostles seem to be driven to perform the most heinous acts of violence and violation you can think of by a primal instinct, and there is a reason for that. They are created by the guardian angels of desire. Towards the tail end of the Black Swordsman arc, after showing us just how powerful and demented these creatures can be, Kentaro Miura introduced the masters of these demons, the God Hand. 5 entities with such profound astral powers that they resided on the thin line that exists between being angelic and demonic. Well, they might have been skewed to the latter inclination a little bit more, because the God Hand appears to be the zenith of demon kind, and apostles are supposed to be their servants. When the Slug Count opens the interstice and tries using his dying request to kill the Black Swordsman, the enemy of all demon kind, he's refused by the God Hand because that's not how things work. Later, Femto states that the loss of a single worthless servant was inconsequential to the God Hand, which gives us a firm grasp over a few things about these guys. Number 1. Apostles are basically demons who have the power to transform into nightmarish monstrosities and have a propensity for killing and devouring humans, or worse. And number 2. They are firmly placed at the bottom of the pecking order in the world of demons, despite their immense strength. Also, whenever an apostle is in the presence of a God Hand member, they are possessed by a maddening instinct. Apostles are naturally subservient to the God Hand, so when they are in the vicinity of one, they enter a feral trance-like state, which makes them feel parched and famished, but euphoric at the same time. Apostles feel like their masters are gusts of the freshest wind in the world when they speak, and they want to ride that wind with their own wings, but are immobilized by their immense hunger and thirst and emotion and pain. Nowhere was this clearer than in Griffith's encounter with Ganishka following his incarnation, where the God Hand's mere presence was enough to bring the proud emperor to his knees. Now that we've explained to you what an apostle is, let's tell you how they're created and the connection between them and Berserk's astral world. They are people who have given their hearts over to the idea of evil, how apostles are created, and their connection to the astral world. The process of becoming an apostle is fairly straightforward in its execution, but complex and frankly spine-chilling in its explanation. Apostles are human beings who gave up their humanity in exchange for a demonic existence focused solely on procuring one's desires. The creation of an apostle is contingent upon causality, because the object that is necessary for their transformation only finds its way to them thanks to causality's plan. To become an apostle, a person must possess a behelit, an egg-shaped stone-like object covered by a misshapen face. The behelit acts as a sort of herald and gateway to doom, because by itself, it is nothing but a creepy rock that might stare at you sometimes if you look at it for too long. But when certain criterion are met, it becomes a key that opens a rift between the physical and astral world. Behelits aren't just found by anyone or picked up by chance, as Berserk often tries to tell you. They're preordained to be found by a specific person at a specific time. And once they've found their owners, no matter how far that person throws it, the behelit will always return to them at the moment of their greatest need. That moment coincidentally happens to be the very moment that the owner of the behelit breaks down and gives in to their despair, with the desire for escaping their suffering holding primacy over everything else. At that moment, when the owner's blood flows into their behelit, its face rearranges itself and activates the key, summoning an interstice, and with it, the God Hand. The guardian angels of desire then prod and prompt the prospective apostle into making a simple sacrifice that will not only end their suffering, but also help them rise again stronger than they've ever been. This temptation is often too good to resist, and so humans chosen to become apostles commit the blackest deeds of their souls right before being transcended. They sacrifice those who define their humanity. It can be anyone, a spouse, a child, a friend, heck, even troops that serve under you. If they are someone who holds a special place in your heart, then you need to sacrifice them because that is the condition for becoming an apostle. Once a person commits themselves to this sacrifice, the threads of causality converge, and their offerings are seared with the brand of sacrifice. Apostles confirm their transcendence, usually by feasting on their own offerings, which then solidifies their ties to the abyss. Did we say the abyss? That's right. Every apostle's body is linked directly to the abyss. When a human being foregoes the things that make them human in order to achieve a higher plane of existence, they must surrender their hearts to it. This opens a fissure inside of their astral selves, which then fills them with the power of the idea of evil, which itself resides within the bowels of the abyss. This is why Emperor Ganishka was able to use living apostles to create his demonic Daka forces. His man-made behelit not only had a central vat of amniotic fluid into which pregnant women were lowered, he also forced the liquid down the apostles' throats and then refined and added it to the vat, which is what infuses it with the essence of evil. This is also why apostles can give birth to pseudo-apostles with seemingly no cost or effect to their own person. So far, we've seen 3 characters create pseudo-apostles: Rosine, Slugcount, and the Egg of the Perfect World, with none of them suffering any kind of side effect from the creation process. This could be because the apostles themselves draw on the evil essence of the abyss and shape it with their will to give birth to their pseudos, instead of using their own life force to do it. But that's conjecture on our end. All this to say that while the physical body of an apostle exists in the physical world, their astral bodies are linked to the abyss from the moment of their reincarnation. So naturally, when an apostle dies, their souls are dragged into the abyss by thousands of dead spirits that swirl endlessly within. The reason why an apostle's body is so fragmented on an astral level is the behelit. A behelit is essentially a spiritual key that binds a person's soul to the abyss in exchange for great power and 0 responsibilities. It technically allows apostles to exist within the deepest layer of the astral world, as the abyss has so far been shown to be the bottom of that endless pit. As such, apostles only have one sacred duty bestowed upon them by their masters: do what thou wilt. Apostles were told to follow their heart and wild out to their contentment, which usually resulted in bad news for the people in their immediate vicinities. The form of an apostle hasn't been confirmed to be a representation of anything quite yet, but what is clear from their release states is that this is who they see as ideal versions of themselves. Though each apostle is unpalatably more grotesque than the last one in their true forms, they retain certain aspects of their human features which end up making them even more terrifying. Multiple mouths, faces, tendrils, genitalia. Let's just say apostle design is where Miura's artistic creativity really gets to flourish. But the point is that once a human being completely rejects those things that make them human, their hearts are rendered to evil, which then flows into their souls and transforms them into apostles, given they've made the appropriate sacrifices, of course. But just because the basic premise of an apostle's creation is universal doesn't mean that they're all the same. Are all apostles the same? What is their role in Berserk's endgame? Just like no two people or cultures are exactly the same, there exist major differences amongst the ranks of apostles as well. While most apostles are your typical bloodthirsty kill first and eat victim later type behemoths, there are a few that stand apart. These apostles show immense restraint despite being motivated by the same desires as their brethren, possibly because their ultimate desire is so strong that it overrides their baser instincts. Locus, Grunbeld, and Irvine are the ones who immediately come to mind, but the best example of such an apostle is Nosferatu Zod. The Immortal One is an enigma even amongst the demons because all he truly desires is to fight against the strongest beings possible. He has fought both humans and apostles to that end, and has only found Skull Knight to be a satisfactory playmate so far. Zod notably declined taking part in the eclipse because he had no interest in indulging in his baser instincts as an apostle, and what makes him even more interesting is the fact that he can seemingly perceive causality. When Zod meets Griffith for the first time, he immediately understands what his possession of the Crimson Behelit means, and even says that it appears to be that kind of a play this time. If it's true that Zod can perceive causality, then it must be something unique to him, because as far as we know, he's the oldest apostle in existence. Zod's been doing this demon thing for 300 years at the very least, and so developing self-control is something he could have picked up along the way, though we think he was always like this, even as a human being. But just because some apostles show the propensity for staying their hand from slaughter a moment more than their lower counterparts, it doesn't make them better monsters. In fact, it's probably the exact opposite of that. During the final battle between Griffith's reborn Band of the Falcon and Ganishka's pseudo-Shiva spawns, Daiba is dumbfounded at the sight of apostles fighting alongside humans as he saw Griffith's war demons in actions. This is because, according to Daiba, apostles are innately viewed by humanity as abominations. They are created by the worst kind of sorcery imaginable, and exist only to hate and be hated, consume and be consumed. The only reason they didn't eat the people riding their backs immediately was because they were being held back by Griffith, but in his shock and awe, Daiba probably didn't register that. In an organized conflict, a trained killer would be worth more than 1,000 rabid cat's paws, and so Zod, Grunbeld, Irvine, and the rest of Griffith's commanding war demons are far more dangerous than their less mindful, more feral underlings, precisely because they stay on target and aren't led astray by their inherent natures. As for the purpose of the apostles, well, we think it's been a while since Berserk had a feast. Griffith is playing a very delicate game of cat and mouse with his own citizens by housing apostles so close to Falconia and keeping them constantly deprived of their most craved foodstuff, man meat. So long as Griffith is present in Falconia, they will probably not attack and devour every person within it on sight. But what happens if he unexpectedly leaves to attend to some other business? And now that Casca, a sacrifice promised to Apostle kind since Griffith's eclipse, is in Falconia, how long will they resist? We know that apostles are literal hellspawn whose souls return to that infernal maelstrom once their lives end, but Falconians knew nothing about anything. If they saw one of the war demons die and be dragged into the abyss, they would instantly renounce their allegiances to Griffith and try to get off the planet. Right now, every person in that city thinks these war demons are just monsters who act as their guardians, because their savior has molded them so. What happens when they realize that they're most likely the ones being prepared for a massive sacrifice? The apostles will be Griffith's main defense against his enemies when they show up for the final battle of Berserk. That's a given. But how else will they impact the story? Guess we're gonna have to wait until chapter 372 drops to find out. Marvelous verdict. But that's it for this video. Apostles are the backbone of Berserk in a way, because without them, the series would just have 5 uber-preachy Cenobite ripoffs as its main antagonists, and no one really wants to invest in a series like that. Apostles are what make Berserk the dark, gritty, action, and trauma-packed journey that it is, and without them, we don't know if the series even remains what it is today. Their link to the astral world and their role in the endgame of the series might seem simple when boiled down to its basic building blocks, but their very presence is what makes Berserk, Berserk. Let us know what you think about Apostles and their link to the Inhuman astral world down in the comments section below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.